Hi, in today's video we're going to take a look at the Cosmic Desktop, which is still in beta but will be released on December the 11th, and we'll be comparing it to Gnome and DWL and seeing what features it has and what features it's missing. So this is Cosmic, and if we switch across here we can see the distros that actually support the Cosmic Desktop at the moment. So we've got Pop, Fedora, Catchy, nixos, Arch Linux, and several others. What I'm going to be doing is actually showing you how to get this set up on nixos, and we'll be following the wiki here to set up the desktop with a couple of lines of code, and I'll be showing you what features it's actually missing and what improvements it has over Gnome. So what I'll do is switch across over here, and I'll open up the settings. Okay, so this is the settings application, and what I'll do is I'll just turn the dock on here, which I've actually got disabled at the moment. And the first thing that was a bit of a gotcha with the dock was actually how you remove pinned applications, because by default what happens is it comes up with a set of applications in the dock, and one of those was the Cosmic App Store, which isn't any use on nixos. And if you're used to Mac OS, you'll be used to sort of dragging the icon in the dock up to remove it from the dock, and that doesn't actually work. What you need to do is right click on the dock and deselect this pin to app tray, and that will remove the application from the dock. You can actually move the applications around in the dock like this. It does actually show up with two applications when you're moving it, which is obviously due to it being in beta. But that's the dock. So that's one of the first things that's a bit of a gotcha. But the main selling point of the Cosmic Desktop is independent workspaces per display. What I mean by that is we have a set of dynamic workspaces going up to 9 on each monitor. So if you've used things like KDE, for example, what you'll know is that when you move, when you switch to a particular desktop on your laptop, the second monitor will also switch. And the way that you get around that is you actually have to pin applications to that particular display. But what Cosmic has is, as I said, it has multiple independent workspaces per display, and I'll show you how that's actually set up. So what I'll do is I'll actually go through the settings. What I'm going to do is also cover the features that are missing that you'd find in a regular desktop like Gnome. For example, there isn't a keychain. On Gnome you have Seahorse password and keys, which can be used to store your SSH keys, so that when you log in you don't have to enter your SSH key every time, and that's currently not implemented on the Cosmic Desktop. So let's have a look through the settings first of all, and there are some things that are actually missing in the GUI. For example, to set custom XKB keyboard layouts. In Gnome you have Gnome tweaks, which you can use to get around that and set those in the GUI. There is a Cosmic tweaks application, but I don't think that that has the ability to set the keyboard layout. So first of all, we've got the network and wireless, Wi-Fi, wired, VPN. We've got Bluetooth. We've got the accessibility. There is a screen reader and a magnifier which magnifies the screen. So let's switch into the desktop. So what you'll see here, let me just put this full screen. So you can see we've also got snapping. We've got window snapping. So let's put that full screen. So let's go through these. We've got the wallpaper. So you can see here I have my wallpaper set, and you do that by going to add image and that brings up a file picker. This is the Cosmic File Manager, which is really nice and simple, and you can go through and select a different wallpaper. Now, one thing to note that threw me at first is, by default, what it does is it actually lists the files and folders by the most recent open date as opposed to alphabetically, but you can actually change that here. So you can see here, newest first. We can change that to A to Z to put it in alphabetical order, like this. Okay. So that's how you can come through and select your images. So come through, select the wallpaper like that. And what you have to do is you select the wallpaper. So let me just switch it to another one. Okay. So I'll select, now I'll select this one, click add. And what you'll see here is I've added a new wallpaper. And what you have to do is actually select it like that. And that will change the wallpaper. So if I come across to number 5, is it not going to let me go to number 5? Okay, there we go. I'm going to switch that back. Right, and what you'll see here is same wallpaper on all displays. So you can actually have different wallpapers per display, and you've got settings for how the wallpaper is scaled to your monitor. You also have a slideshow, which you haven't tried. So I presume that if you have multiple wallpapers selected, it will initiate a slideshow. So that's the wallpaper. Then we've got the appearance. So this is where you can select whether you're using a dark or light theme, and the accent colors here. There's also an option to automatically switch between light and dark modes, which, so it switches to light mode at next sunrise. So obviously what it does is it's a bit like night light, where it will actually change the desktop settings according to the time of day. Then you've got the accent colors, which will be the colors used for the hints in the interface here and in the file manager. You've got the window background. I haven't tried the container background as yet. And then what we have down here is the style. So what we've got here is 3 different styles of the interface. So you can see up here, these are the slightly round option. What I found is if you select round, it comes up with a big circle, and it's not quite as attractive, and square is a bit boxy. So next thing we have is the interface density, which is the density of the user interface, such as here. So compact, comfortable, spacious. I've just left it at the default comfortable here, so it's, comfortable, as it were. Next, what we have down here is the window management, and this is for the floating option. So what you have is the active window hint size and the gaps around the tiled window. So the active window hint size is actually the border that is placed around a window when it's active. By default, I think this was like 4 and 8. So it has quite a big border by default, a 4-pixel border by default, and a gap of, I think it was about 8. And you can't go below, you can go to 0. I didn't think you could. So if I switch this to tiled mode, so what we can do up here is, this is the panel that I'll get into in a second, and what you can do is actually change the workspace behavior from tiled, from floating to tiled. And you can see here that I can select this tile current workspace, and you should have active hint. So as you can see now, I have the active hint border around this window. If I open a terminal with Super T, what you see, this is the Cosmic terminal. What's really nice about this is the tiling functionality is using the keyboard shortcuts you might be familiar with things like DWL. So you've got Super H and Super L to switch between the currently active window here. And if I open another one there, you'll see it comes up. And what I want to do is actually take you through one of the issues with the tiling. So, for example, I have the alacritty terminal. If I switch back across here, I've got the alacritty terminal and Emacs here. And if I switch back across here and open the alacritty terminal, what you'll notice is it actually opens full screen and it's not tiled. And the reason for that is if I come into my alacritty config. Okay. In alacritty, you have settings for how the window behaves, and what I've got is set to maximize. And when you have it set to maximize, it won't actually tile. So if I change this to windowed, I think it's windowed, and switch back across, you'll now see that it's working with the tiling mode. So that's one thing to be aware of, is the settings in some applications can actually prevent it from tiling properly. Let me see if I can open Emacs. You can see here Emacs is actually opening full screen. And the other thing that you'll notice is Emacs actually has a bar up here with the minimize, maximize and close buttons. Okay, and there is a setting in Emacs where you can actually disable the header bar, but that's not actually taking effect in the Cosmic desktop. And that was also an issue on earlier versions of Gnome that used to ship with Debian 12, I believe it was. So what I'll do is actually come through some of the settings that are sort of quite sort of useful. So if we come down here to icons and toolkit theming, what you'll notice is there are three options here: Adwaita, Cosmic and Pop. And the default is Cosmic. What I've done is actually changed it to libadwaita, because in the nixos wiki it actually mentions there's an issue theming Firefox if you're using the Cosmic icon set, and you actually have to apply a certain setting to get the theming to work with the Cosmic icon set. So I just set it to libadwaita. Okay, so we come out the desktop here, and let me just put this back to the normal mode. Okay, so we've had a look at the wallpaper, the appearance, and now let's have a look at the panel. So this is the panel up here, and when you first launch the Cosmic desktop, what you'll get is a wizard which allows you to set the position of the dock and the panel. And you have kind of two sort of options, having the panel at the top, which is more like a Mac OS sort of Gnome style, or you can have the panel at the bottom, which is more reminiscent of something like KDE or Windows. And you have an option here to automatically hide the panel, so that I presume when you put the maximize the window, it will actually hide the panel. But I don't want to do that, because it's useful to be able to see the workspace number as well as the applets, so you've got access to the functionality the applets provide. So you can see here we've got the position on the screen. You can actually do left, right, top or bottom, and you can actually show on all displays or just a single display. And as I said, the workspaces actually are independent per monitor, so you actually do want to have the panel on both displays so that when you're on your second display you can see which workspace you're switching to. So the default is to extend the panel to the screen edges so that the panel will go right across the full width of the screen, which I've left as the default. The appearance, you've got match desktop or light or dark. You've got the size, the background opacity, so I presume you can change the opacity of the panel. I haven't really tried that. But the important thing here is the panel applets. So what you'll find by default is the time will be set in the middle here. So what you'll see here is you've got three options: start segment, center segment, and end segment. The start segment's over here, the center is in the center, and the end is over here. So what you can do is actually just move the position of the time here so that it's actually on the right and not in the middle, which I personally find a bit annoying. So what I've done is actually remove some of the default applets and added the numbered workspaces over here. We got the notification center, notification tray, that's a notification center. We got the tiling up here. We got the sound. So if we come into the sound here, what you'll see is you have the volume adjustment here. You've got the mic level here. You can switch the input and output. So if you plug in some speakers or something, it will come up here and you can change from the internal speakers to your sort of USB speakers like Harman Kardon sound sticks or something like that. You can see we've got the microphone selected here, which is the Yeti. And what's also interesting is when you first log into the desktop, if you have headphones plugged in to your computer, you'll get a little OSD pop-up saying, do you want to continue using the headphones or switch to your sort of built-in speakers? You also have the show media controls on panel. And what that does is when you're playing a video, what will happen is you'll get three icons come up. You'll have a sort of previous track, pause, play, and next track option. There doesn't seem to be a stop button. So if you turn that on, you have additional icons showing the media controls, but the media controls also actually show up in this applet here. You will also get information about the currently playing media or audio, and that will be applications that support Empress, such as browsers, you know, Firefox, Chromium, or MPV using the MPV Empress add-on. So we then got the sound settings there. The next one we have is the network settings here. So you can see we can change we can enable airplane mode. We've got Wi-Fi. We can view visible wireless networks, and typically what these applets have is a quick link to the section in this settings application here, so you can change the settings for that particular applet. So that's the network, and then we have the power and battery. What you'll notice is it's got a little blue dot up here, and that's because I've got this set to high performance. So what we have here is the screen brightness, and this is the keyboard backlight. So there are the function keys for the screen brightness work, but interestingly, on my MacBook Air, which I tried this out first of all, the screen brightness using the keys wouldn't go above 80% for some reason, but I don't know why that is. But this is the toggle for enabling the keyboard backlight. There is a keyboard shortcut for the keyboard backlight, but it's disabled by default. So I'll take you through that in a bit, but you can see here, this is how we can actually switch between battery balanced and high performance, which is useful. The next one we've got is the user session up here. So this is where you can lock the screen, log out. I'm not sure what that is. I presume that's kind of like a night light. This is reboot and this is power off. And then finally we have the date and time, which actually comes up with a little calendar here. And by default, what it will also do, it will show the day and the month, and I'll show you how you can actually sort of change that option so it just shows the time. If we come across to add applet, you can see here, these are the applets that you can actually add. So we got the app tray, accessibility, Bluetooth, input sources, minimized windows, app library button. So this is a it's a bit like the heads up display that you get on Gnome when you press the launcher and it comes up showing you all of the applications. And one of the interesting things is on nixos it actually doubles up the applications. It's actually showing two instances of a lot of my applications, and I presume that's because on nixos you have different generations of sort of when you use Home Manager on nixos, you can sort of rebuild sort of applications, and I guess what it's doing is it's actually showing that's confusing it and showing it multiple versions of the application. We've got the launcher button, which is the sort of the launcher, which let me just come across here. Right, come out of that. So by default, the launcher is set to the super key. And what I've done is I've rebound it to super A. And what you'll see is this is very reminiscent of KRunner on KDE. Now the advantage of, let me just move this down here. The advantage of this over Gnome is, if you ever use Gnome, you'll know that when you open the application launcher, what happens is it shifts. It comes up with a big grid of applications, kind of zooms out your desktop, and it also zooms out the window on your second monitor, which is really annoying if you're watching a video, because it will, every time you open an application, it will zoom out your window on your second monitor, which is extremely irritating. So what you can do here is you can actually search for applications, but you can see here what it's doing is it's actually listing the currently open desktops here. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the 4 virtual desktops that I've got set up on this display, and it's also showing the 5th display, which is actually on the second monitor on the first workspace, as it were. So if you press Control 1, 2, 3, 4, it will switch to that application, that desktop. The other nice thing is if I type Firefox, what you'll see here is what it will do is it will actually switch to the currently open application. So you can see if I press, if I select this, it's going to switch to Firefox. If I switch back here to number 2, it's, that's interesting. Switch to number 2, it'll switch back to this window. So you have the ability to switch desktops, but also switch to currently open applications. And it's much better than using Gnome because, as I said, Gnome will sort of zoom out your window, and it's really distracting because it takes you out of your workflow. So as I said, you can search for stuff. So you can see here Firefox. It should try. Okay, yeah. So if I select number 2, it should open a new instance of Firefox. But if I select that, it's going to switch to that application. Okay. So those are the applets, and that's how you can reorder them by moving them around start segment, center, end. And I think by default what it comes up with is it has the workspace button and the app launcher. So what happens by default is it doesn't have the numbered workspaces up here. That's what I added as an applet. I removed the workspace button and the app library button. So what it comes up with is is very much like Gnome. It will have applications and then sort of like what's it called? It's basically the same sort of as Gnome before they switched to using that little sort of dash to indicate, what workspace you're on. It will say sort of like applications and workspaces, but I removed those. So those are the applets. Okay, so let's come back out of that. So then we got the applets, then we got the dock over here. So you can toggle the dock on and off. Now, the difference between the dock on Cosmic and Gnome is, on Gnome, what will happen is, typically if you press like super 1, 2, 3, 4, what will happen is it will activate the applications listed here. So if you press super 1, instead of switching to the desktop, it will open the first application in the dock. And that's really irritating, because if you want to be able to use super 1, 2, 3, and 4 to switch workspaces, you've got to go through and disable a whole load of stuff in the settings using dconf, which is kind of really irritating. So as I said, what we've got here is the dock. You can toggle it on and off, automatically hide the dock. You can set the position. You can set it to display on all displays. And I haven't really played around with these. And these are the dock applets. So these are some of the default. Bring that down. Okay. So these are some of the predefined applets that will appear in the dock down here. You can see this is showing the currently open applications, and what you've got here is workspace buttons. So this is the workspaces. So that's the workspaces, and what I'll do is actually show you how you can change the workspace layout from the default, which is horizontal, which used to be the layout on earlier versions of Gnome, to horizontal, which in my opinion makes more sense. So those are dock applets, and I'll just disable the dock because I don't really use it. If you're using an application launcher, you don't really need the dock as well. It's kind of, a bit superfluous. You don't need to come down here and click icons in the dock if you're using an application launcher. So that's the dock. Then we've got the window management. So this is the super key action, which by default is set to open the launcher. And what I've done is actually set that to disable, and then change the keyboard shortcut to super A. And the reason for that is because if you have the default option for the launcher just set to super, it's a bit irritating, because sometimes you'll press super and you're going to press 1, 2, 3, and 4 to switch workspaces, and if you're not quick enough, the launcher will come up. So that's one thing I do, is actually set this to disable, but you can change that how you want. We've got show active window hint, show maximize, show minimize. I thought I turned these off. Okay, let me just. Okay, So turning those off has actually removed the extra icons in Emacs. I could have sworn I turned those off, so I'm not sure if it's actually I re-enabled them. And then what we have down here is the focus navigation. So focus follows cursor, cursor follows focus. So this is if you focus follows cursor, if I turn that on, you can see here it's deselected. When I move it back, it's selected like that. Or cursor follows focus. Not sure what the difference is between the two, but I've just left them off, which is the default. So that's the window management. Then we got the workspaces. So this is the important thing. Workspaces span displays. And what that means is that I believe that means that it would actually, when you change workspaces on the laptop, it would also change them on the second monitor. See? So the default is displays have separate workspaces. And what that means is, as I said, when you switch workspaces on your laptop, the application on your second display won't move, which is really what you want. Now, the default workspace orientation is vertical, which I don't like, which means that when you switch workspaces, it's going to go up and down. So upper vertex, set it to horizontal. Okay, and we've got the displays. Now, the interesting thing about the displays is, by default, what happened was, you can see I've got 2 and 1. So what actually happened, which threw me for a minute, was the first display is actually the external monitor, and the second display is the laptop screen. And it completely threw me for a second, because it came up with the welcome screen, and I couldn't select anything. I couldn't figure out why that was, and it was because the monitors were switched the wrong way round. So I had to move my cursor kind of round the screen so that I could enter the, interact with the welcome screen. So one of the first things that you're actually going to want to do if you've got an external display is actually move these round. So you've got 2 and 1. So 2 is actually the laptop display, and 1 is actually the external display for some reason. So you can actually toggle the display on and off here. You've got mirroring, you've got the resolution, refresh rate, scale, additional scale options, and orientation. So the orientation, I presume, would be if you've got a vertical monitor, you can select that option there. Then we've got the sound. We've got the output volume, output device, the balance. You can actually have amplification so that you can raise the volume above 100%. You've got the input volume, the input device, profile, and amplification for the input device as well. And we've got power and battery. So this is where you can set the performance level or the power mode. So extended battery life, balanced, or higher performance. I'm plugged in, so I've gone for high performance. Then you've got the power saving options, which are the screen blanking. So by default, I think it's like it's set to 15 minutes. So this will turn the screen off sort of after 15 minutes. I set that to never. Automatically suspend when plugged in, I set that to never as well. I think by default this is 15 minutes, and that may be 5 minutes. So that's another thing that you're going to want to do is set the power saving option so that the screen doesn't blank and it doesn't automatically suspend, which kind of will actually enable it's basically kind of like logging out, because when you come back to the computer, you have to re-log in, which I find a bit annoying. So you're going to probably want to set these two to never and leave the automatic suspend on battery power to maybe 15 minutes. Okay, then we've got the input devices where we've got the keyboard, mouse and the touchpad. So I'll just go through the touchpad first of all. So what's nice about this is by default it's not set to natural scrolling. So when I move the mouse up, it goes, it goes that way, and when it moves down, it goes that way, as opposed to natural scrolling, which does it the completely opposite way, which is really irritating. I haven't changed the scrolling options here, scroll with 2 fingers. And what we've got here is the gestures. The 4-finger swipe will switch workspaces. And from what I can see, you can't actually change that. You've got to use 4 fingers. And if you can see here, if I switch with the gestures like that, it's really quick. But if I switch with the keyboard shortcuts, it's a lot slower. So at present, there isn't an option to speed that up or kind of disable the animations, as it were. So switching by swiping is faster than switching using the keyboard shortcuts. So that's the touchpad. There's the mouse, scrolling speed. You can select natural scrolling as well if you want for that. And then we've got the keyboard here. So let me put that full screen. So this is where you can select your input source for the keyboard. So I've set this to English UK Macintosh so that because I was a Mac user for 20 years until Lion came out, and they bought in the App Store, I think it was in Mountain Lion, and it all went downhill from there. So this is where you can select the input source, but you don't have an option to select the XKB layout. And that is what you use to actually rearrange particular keys on your keyboard. So this is how you can, for instance, swap things like Control Alt and the super key. And I'll show you how you actually do that. So that's how you can select your keyboard layout. Yeah. And this is the keyboard shortcut. So you can see here, keyboard shortcuts, view and customize keyboard shortcuts. And what you have here is manage windows, move windows, navigation, system, window tiling, and custom. And custom is where you can define custom keyboard shortcuts, for example, to open the Alacritty terminal, open Emacs, and set other keyboard shortcuts for things like WLR which key, which is actually a WL Roots application, but actually works on Cosmic, which it doesn't on Gnome, which is really interesting. Now, the Wayland compositor used by Cosmic is actually something called Smith-A. There are generally 3 main types of Wayland compositors. You've got Gnome, which, or what was it you use? I forget what they're called. You got basically you got Gnome, you got KDE, and you got WL Roots. And WL Roots is used for things like tiling window managers, Sway, DWL, Hyperland, that sort of thing. So what we've got here is manage windows. So what I've done is change the close window to Super Shift and C, which is typically what I would use on something like DWL. So that's how I can close the windows. And what's interesting here is that you'll note is you can have multiple keyboard shortcuts for each what would you call it, for each sort of function. So for close window, you can have multiple keyboard shortcuts for each of these. So you can just add another key binding or reset to default. So we've got maximize window, full screen, minimize, resize window inwards. I've no idea what that is. I've only just set this up. I've only been using this for like a day. So I haven't gone through everything completely. We've got sticky windows. So I've got no idea what resize window inwards and outwards are. I haven't played around with those as yet. So we've got move windows. So this is how you can move the windows. And what's really nice about this is they have really sensible defaults that you'll be familiar with if you're using tiling window managers like DWL or Sway, that kind of thing. And what's really good is you have simple, you have options to move the windows to different workspaces, you can see here. So what you've got is, if I come back, have I managed windows? I think it's the navigation. Okay. So this is how you can move windows to particular workspaces. So super shift and 1, 2, 3, 4 to move a window to a particular workspace. What's really nice here as well is you've actually got the ability to move windows to another monitor, which I don't think you have. I can't remember. I don't think you've got that in Gnome. I may be wrong, but you can see here, move window, one monitor down, one monitor left, one monitor right, one monitor up. And this is particularly useful, for example, if you're using, if you open a video in picture and you want to move the picture-in-picture window to an external display, you know, to your monitor on the right, you can press Super Alt Shift right, and of course you can rebind these keys to something else that's more comfortable with, you know, having to press quite as many keys here. So what I'll probably do is change these to the keyboard shortcuts that I use in DWL. But that's really useful because it allows you to, as I said, open a picture-in-picture window and move that picture-in-picture window to your external monitor. Okay, so did we go through navigation? Okay, so this is the focus window. So what you can see here is this is typically going to be used with floating mode. So if I enable the floating up here, so tiled, turn that on. And if I press Super T, that's going to open the Cosmic terminal, and I'll go through and show you the Cosmic terminal in some more detail. But what I wanted to show you was that by pressing Super H and Super L, you can switch between the active window, and you'll be familiar with the highlighting function here, so that it will add a border around the active window. But what you will notice is you can see the gap. So what you'll notice is there is a 1 pixel gap here, even though it's not currently selected, which you don't get with DWL. So you can't, I don't think you can remove the gap completely, which is kind of a bit annoying. So let me open another one. So if I press J and K, you can Super J and K, you can see I can go up and down, and it's going to highlight the window. And as I said, the default setup is to have I think it was a 4 pixel border and a 8 pixels of padding, which I found a bit much, so I just pulled those right down to 1. But so Super H, Super L, Super J and K, so you'll be familiar with that if you've ever used something like DWL or Sway. Okay. Okay, let's just turn that back off. Floating, I'll come workspace and put that back. Okay, so that's how you can sort of focus the window using sort of the Vim key bindings, as it were, sort of super J, H, J, K, and L to navigate windows in tiling mode. And what you'll see down here is the options to switch workspace. So what you'll see is switch to workspace 1, 2, 3, 4 set up, so you can use super 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is great because, as I said, on Gnome, by default, at least on sort of Ubuntu, it will come with the dock. And even if you disable the dock in Ubuntu, you actually have to go through and use dconf or G settings to reset all the key bindings so that you can actually use super 1, 2, 3, 4 to actually switch the workspaces, which is a really, really annoying to have to go through and unbind all the key bindings for the dock, even though you've disabled it. So that's the navigation. We've got the system here. So we got the open the app library. I disabled that. So the app library, I'll have to show you the app library. So let me set that to open the app library. I think this is where you actually enter a key binding. So I'll do something like super B. No, okay, that's the web browser. Super N. Right, okay. So super N. Let's just check that. Super N. If I press super N, okay, this is what I was talking about. When you open the app library, what will happen is you'll get this display come up here, and the issue with this is, for instance, on a smaller laptop screen like the MacBook Air 11-inch, which is one of my old computers, this actually takes up most of the screen, so it's a bit irritating. And what you've got here is different sort of categories, so you can actually categorize stuff. I suppose it could be useful because it shows you all of the applications installed on the system, but what you'll notice in my case here is, I think this is because I'm using nixos, is actually doubling up the applications, and that may be because I'm presuming that when you use Home Manager, it kind of installs what are called different derivations. You have kind of different versions of installed applications, and for some reason it seems to be picking up the same application twice. So that's why I've got several copies of each application here. So I'll just remove that, and I'm going to remove that key binding, which you can do just by pressing the button there. Okay. So open the launcher. So as I said, the default is to use the super key, and what I did was I set that to disabled, as I showed you in the previous section, and what I did was actually rebind that to super A, which is so super A, and that's typically what I would use for DWL with the Toffee, which is a sort of D menu Wayland version, is a kind of a Wayland version of D menu, so that you would actually get a list of the applications coming up at the top panel here. Workspace overview, so super W will show you the workspaces like that, so you can click between them. Switch between open windows, so we've got super tab or alt tab. So super tab, you can see here I can switch between the applications like that, and you'll notice it's also listing the applications on the second monitor as well. And what might be quite confusing is it's listing it as 5, even though OBS Studio is on the first workspace on the second display. So that is slightly confusing, but obviously you couldn't have one listed twice. So that's just something that's slightly confusing. I'm not sure if there's sometimes in some systems there's an option to only show the only show the applications on a particular monitor when you use super tab or alt tab, but I'm not sure if that option exists. We've got log out, log the screen. Okay, so these are the x86 keys. So those are the function keys at the top of your keyboard where you can they're typically labeled, you know, like F1, F2, F3, and those also have the ability to change the volume, the screen brightness, that sort of thing. And what you'll see here is we've got the keyboard shortcuts for raising and lowering the volume. So you can see here I can increase and decrease the volume, and what's really nice is you have a nice little heads-up display for the volume down at the bottom, and that's an advantage over things like DWL, which don't typically have a volume heads-up display. So that's really handy. But one thing is, you don't actually, from what I can see, you don't actually have the ability to show the volume level beside the applet. You've got to click in the applet to actually see the volume level. But because you've got the heads-up display down here, you don't really need that anyway. So you also have the play, pause, next track, previous track, which correspond to F4, F5, and F6 on your keyboard. So you can, if you're viewing something in YouTube or a video player that supports Empress, you can toggle play and pause and move to the next and previous track. And what you've got down here is display screen brightness and increase screen brightness, which are typically bound to I think is it sort of F10, F11, F12, that sort of thing. But what you'll see, as I mentioned, is the settings for the keyboard backlight are actually disabled, and I can't remember what the XF86 button is for the keyboards here. But as I said, if you come across to, was it power? No. Which one is it? There's one of these. I think it's the power. Is it the power? Yeah, so the power. So when you want to turn on your keyboard backlight, you can come up to the battery indicator and put this up to 100, and that will turn on your keyboard backlight. So by default, as I said, the keyboard shortcuts for the backlight are actually disabled, and I'll have to look into how you can actually enable those and what key you need to put in for those. You've got take a screenshot, open the terminal, which opens the Cosmic terminal, open the home folder, web browser, or toggle touchpad. I'm not quite sure what that's for. I presume that's for disabling the touchpad, perhaps. So those are the keyboard shortcuts. Is that the system? Yeah. Yeah, that's the one we were just looking at. Then you've got the window tiling. So this is how you change the tiling mode. So toggle window tiling. So that's the equivalent of coming up here and toggling this on. Stacking would be So you've got stacking and floating, sort of, traditional toggle orientation, swap window. I haven't really gone through a lot of these settings here. And then you've got the custom. So this is where you add custom keyboard shortcuts to launch applications. So for example, I have the Emacs client set up. So Emacs client -a equals and then -c, and that will open the Emacs client using super control return. Then I'll have WLR which key bound to super Z and alacritty bound to super shift return. Let me just come back to here and change that back to maximized. Okay, so it's a good point to actually show you WLR which key. So if I press super Z, what you'll see is I have a little heads-up display where I can press a keyboard shortcut to actually execute a command. So I can press M to take the content of the clipboard, which would be a YouTube link that I've copied or a video link I've copied, and open it with MPV, and that will open MPV on my external monitor full screen. Then I have some keyboard shortcuts. Another one, D, will open MPV using a script I wrote that actually uses FFmpeg with MPV. It uses YTDLP, FFmpeg, and MPV. And that script was basically to get around an issue where sometimes MPV stopped working with YTDLP. Pinch is a script that I wrote that takes a YouTube URL or a URL supported by YTDLP and sends the audio to MPD, which is the music player daemon, so it will actually play just the audio. And S will actually let me take a screenshot using Grim, which is another WL root application, and I can press L to take a snapshot of the laptop, M to take a screenshot of the monitor, or B to take a screenshot of both displays at the same time. There is a built-in screenshot application for Cosmic, which I'll show you as well. But I was really surprised that both WLR which key and Grim work on Cosmic, because they don't work at all on the Gnome desktop. Let me just finish the tea off before it gets too cold. Oh, no, it is cold. Okay, so that's how you can add a custom shortcut. So add shortcut, you put in the shortcut name, the command, and then once you've done that, you come into this section here and you press the keyboard shortcut combination, and it will actually warn you if the keyboard shortcut you're trying to use is actually taken. So those are the keyboard shortcuts. So let's come back out of that. And then we've got the applications here. So you've got sort of default applications. So you can set the default applications for associated MIME types, or your preferred browser. So I've got Firefox set as default. You've got the file manager, which is Cosmic Files. It may be picking up some of these options from the MIME app list, which is a text file that contains a list of applications and the MIME types associated with them. So this is where you can actually change those sort of options. Startup applications. Interestingly, if I come across here, .config, I've removed it, but in your .config directory, you can create an auto start directory and a .desktop entry to auto start applications, which is something you might be familiar with if you've ever used Gnome. So it looks like you can sort of do add app and add it directly here, but you can also use the auto start desktop entries, which will then call a script to actually start a particular application. I did, however, on Gnome, what I used to do was actually have an auto start application that would kill the Gnome notification center. So I could use Emacs with EDNC, which is the Emacs desktop notification center for my notifications. And Cosmic uses something called Cosmic Notifications, which you can't actually remove. And using the auto start file, which called a script that ran pkill-f cosmic-notifications, didn't actually work. It wouldn't actually kill the notifications. So that didn't work for me, probably due to like a race condition or something like that. But this is how you can have startup applications. Then you've got X11 applications compatibility. So this is where you can actually set compatibility for X11 applications that will use X Wayland. I haven't really played around with this, but that's where this is basically set up. Okay. Then we've got time and language. So we've got date and time. So date and time. What I wanted to show you is show date in the time applet. If I turn that on, what you'll see is it now says the date for December at 14:35, but I don't really want that, so I just toggle that off so it's a bit cleaner. So that's how you can set it. You can set the time zone, 24-hour time, show seconds, first day of the week, that sort of thing. Region and language. So this is how you can set the sort of language and the region. And then we've got system accounts, where you've got user, about, and firmware details. So that's an overview of the settings. So what I'll do now is actually go through some of the applications that come with Cosmic. So we've got the Cosmic terminal here. And if I put this, see if I can put this full screen. What you'll notice is we actually have a menu. You actually have a menu. So this is the other difference between Cosmic and Gnome, is that there aren't any hamburger menus, which is wonderful. I hate hamburger menus, and Gnome is basically a bit like putting iOS on your computer. I mean, the issue is there are only really, until now, there were only really two Wayland desktops, as it were, KDE and Gnome. Of course, you've got the WL Roots tiling window managers, you know, Sway, Hyperland, DWL, that sort of thing. But for desktops, you only really had a choice of KDE or Gnome for Wayland. And the issue with KDE is that it doesn't have independent workspaces per display. So you actually have to pin applications to your monitor to set it so that they don't move when you switch workspaces on your desktop, which is kind of really irritating. So what we got here is tabs. You actually got tabs here. You can do tabs, new window. You got profiles. I haven't looked into that. If you right click on here, show header, and that will actually remove the header up there, because you can right click and have all the same options that you would have with these these menus, I think, or at least most of them. Let me just put that back full screen. Okay. So what you'll see is you've got split horizontal, split vertical, toggle maximized, settings, and passwords. So I presume passwords is for things like your SSH keys, because as I said, at the moment, the Cosmic desktop doesn't have a keychain. It doesn't have a keychain like Password and Keys, which is the Seahorse application on Gnome. I'm not sure if you could install Password and Keys, the Gnome application on Cosmic, but I didn't really bother with that. But if you wanted to save your SSH key, you could probably do that with the Cosmic terminal, which is actually a Rust terminal with GPU acceleration, I believe. So let's just remove the header. What you can do is actually have tabs. So you can have tabs with this terminal, which is quite nice. And as I said, the keyboard shortcut for this by default is Super and T to open a new terminal. So yeah, this I haven't really played around with this terminal, but it seems quite nice, and maybe it's an alternative to Alacritty. I haven't checked out the difference in performance or font rendering or anything like that, but you know, it's a decent terminal, and you know, quite nice and clean. Okay, so the other applications we've got are the file manager, Cosmic Files, and I actually quite like this simple flat layout of the applications, as opposed to the more stylized sort of applications you'd get on Gnome, which kind of, as I said, are really dumbed down. You know, you just got the sort of hamburger menus and everything's hidden away. So what we've got up here is this toggles the sidebar like that, and you've got the XDG directories. So by default, what will happen is it will come up with public and templates as well, but you can actually disable those. So if I come into my config, where is it? User directories. Yeah. Okay. So what you've got is in your .config directory, you've got user-dirs.config and user-dirs.directories. And you can see these are symlinks in my case, and that's because I've set those with the home manager to enable these by default. So user-directories.conf enabled equals false. What that does is that disables the creation of the public and templates directories, which I never use and just really irritate me. And if you don't set this to enabled equals false, if you delete them and then reboot, they'll be recreated automatically. And the user dirs file allows you to specify the location of the XDG directories, such as desktop, documents, downloads, music, pictures, videos. So you can actually specify the location of these files. And for instance, if you wanted to have all your files lowercased, so if you wanted to have desktop lowercased or documents lowercased, that is actually possible. So you can actually specify in here the location and the case of the directories for the XDG directories. Okay, right. So again, this is the file manager, and that's why all of that comes up. You've got the trash, the networks. zpool is because I'm using ZFS on my Nix system. So that's why I have the zpool come up. And when you plug in drives, they will actually show up here. And what's also nice is you've actually got the ability to edit the path. So you can actually change the path, which Gnome doesn't like you to do. And you got the sorting options like A to Z, newest first. You got view, zoom in, zoom out, grid view, show hidden files, list directories first. I haven't seen the gallery preview. Let's see if go into the pictures. Okay, will that show up? No, gallery preview. No, that doesn't do anything. But you can go to grid view here or list view. And then you've got the settings. I haven't really gone through the settings. So this is where you can change the theme so it matches the desktop. Type to search the current folder and all subdirectories, enter the path to the directory of files, so that determines how the search works. Single click to open. Okay. What else we got? Edit, cut, copy, or paste, select all. New tab. So you got tabs in the file manager as well. That's nice. New folder, new file, reload, rename, add to sidebar. So what's really nice is System 76 is more focused on the user than Gnome, in my opinion. Gnome is style over substance, really. They're not interested in your workflow. It's basically Nanny knows best. Here's what we think you should use, and you have to use it and like it or lump it. And you can't change anything. Of course, you can install, add-ons, which are going to break every time you do an upgrade. So this is much more flexible and allows you to customize things to how you want your sort of workflow to to be. So yeah, that's the file manager. Then we've got Cosmic Text Editor. So this is the Cosmic Text Editor. You've got the sidebar here. Open project. File, new window, open file, close file, open project. Git management. That's quite interesting. Yeah. So I haven't really gone through the file editor here in great detail because I was actually I kind of got sidetracked setting some things up, which I'll show you with copy and paste and Emacs. But you've got lots of nice options in here. Zoom in, default, word wrap, the basic text editor, but it seems to have some nice features. But what I want to do now is actually come across to how you set this up on NixOS, and it's actually quite easy. But there are a couple of things that you do want to set up. So basically, these are the two lines that actually set up the Cosmic Login Manager and the Cosmic Desktop Environment. Services Display Manager Cosmic Greeter enabled equals true. So that's the GUI login, and this installs the Cosmic Desktop. And you also have an option down here to automatically log in when you sort of boot up. So typically if you've got your computer encrypted, which you should do by default using whatever Lux or whatever, and you don't want to have to log in after you've typed in your password, it will log in automatically. You also have the ability to exclude Cosmic applications, so you can have environment Cosmic exclude applications with PKGs, Cosmic edit, and that will exclude the Cosmic Edit application when you rebuild nixos. As I said, I tried to exclude Cosmic notifications so I could use the Emacs Desktop Notification Center, but it gave me a warning saying if you do that, it might impact the functionality of the desktop, and it's not recommended to do that. So that's how you can actually disable some particular Cosmic applications, but there aren't actually that many installed by default, so to be honest, it's not really needed. This is one that you are going to want to add, the optimization. You can significantly improve the performance of your Cosmic installation by enabling System76's own scheduler using this code block inside of your nixos configuration file. Services system76-scheduler.enabled equals true. Okay. And these are two other things worth mentioning. The clipboard. So what I found was I was actually having issues with the clipboard not working between applications. For example, not being able to copy and paste between Emacs and web browsers and things like that, which is critical. So I enabled environment session variables Cosmic data controlled enabled equals 1, and this is basically saying due to security concerns, Wayland defaults to the behavior where only focused clients windows can set the clipboard. Clipboard ownership is tied tightly to the focused client, so that background application cannot replace the clipboard contents. This security measure can be bypassed. But please be noted, this means all windows now have access to the clipboard globally. I mean, that's not really an issue, to be honest. And this is the other thing I wanted to mention is theming in Firefox. If you attempted to theme the behavior of the Cosmic desktop but don't see it reflected in Firefox, that's because Firefox is using the libaddwaiter theme, and this feature needs to be disabled. And it can be disabled using this option, widget GTK libaddwaiter colors enabled equals false. But as I said, rather than doing that, I just set the icons to use libaddwaiter. So what I'll do is I'll just actually switch across to my nixos configuration here. Okay, so I've commented out all the GNOME stuff. I still have DWL installed as a backup, but if I come across to Cosmic, so we got the clipboard settings here. Cosmic, okay, and display manager Cosmic Greeter enabled. That's the login manager. The desktop environment. So I've only got one Cosmic. I've got those two and the clipboard. So literally I've got three lines of code in my configuration.nix to enable the Cosmic desktop. What I want to mention now is the seat. If I come across to print env, okay, what you'll notice is what we have here is the xdg runtime directory, which is run user and then your user ID. We have xdg seat 0, Cosmic session desktop Cosmic, and where's the Wayland socket? So if I run user 1000, what you'll see here is Wayland 1. So this is the Wayland socket. And what actually had me thrown for a while is this can either be Wayland 0 or Wayland 1. And the issue and the reason why this is important is because this is actually used by the clipboard and things like opening links in an application and having them open in a browser. So what I actually had to do, config emacs init.el. Okay, so what I had was this code here for the Wayland clipboard. So this allows me to copy and paste from the clipboard into Emacs and from Emacs into other applications. And this stopped working, and it had me completely stumped as to why the clipboard wasn't working at all in Emacs. And the reason for that was because Emacs couldn't find the Wayland socket. It was looking for Wayland 0, whereas it was actually Wayland 1. And this may be because I have DWL set up on this machine. So DWL had taken Wayland 0, and when I enabled Cosmic, it incremented the socket name to Wayland 1. So what I did was I got Gemini to actually knock up some code to actually detect the Wayland socket so that it would be used in Emacs to enable the clipboard and also opening links in Emacs so that they opened in the browser. So I'll put a link to this here, but basically what this does is this checks the run user user ID directory, which is in my case 1000, and looks for the and checks if Wayland, the file Wayland 1 exists, and if not, it will go down to Wayland 0. So this is basically what gets the Wayland socket working in Emacs so that the clipboard works, which is kind of, pretty crucial. So that's one thing that actually had me sort of stumped for a while. Now, the other thing I should mention is, actually, while I'm on the subject of Emacs early init. So this line of code here, under no title bar, add to list, default frame, a list, undecorated T, should actually disable the title bar up here, but it doesn't in Cosmic. And this was actually an issue in earlier versions of Gnome as well, where the title bar in both Alacritty and Emacs couldn't be disabled and would sort of show up even if you configured the settings to remove them. So if we come across to config Alacritty, what you'll see here in the Alacritty config is we got Windows decorations none, startup maximized. So you can see here Alacritty doesn't actually have a title bar. So Alacritty, you can disable the title bar in Alacritty using that option, but not in Emacs. And as I said, if you have this set to maximized, okay, and I set this to tiled, what you will notice is when I open a new instance of Alacritty, it actually opens full screen and doesn't tile. So what you have to do is set that to windowed. Okay, now it's set to windowed. You can see it actually has a border around it. So the difference between tiled and floating modes is that if you have tiled mode on, you will get a border around the application. So is this workspace? Okay, so the other thing is that's nice is you can see this is set to tiled, but this is still set to floating. So what you can see here is, unless you set this to tiled, it won't. Okay, now it's got the border. You can see. If I disable that, it should go back to not having a border. So if you're just using the floating layout, you won't get the border around the applications. And as I said, you can have floating or tiled per workspace, which is really nice. So if I open Alacritty again, you'll see now I have now tiling will work. So tiling only works in Alacritty if it's set to windowed mode, and I can super H and L to switch between the windows. But what you'll notice, as I said, which is different from DWL, is the window that doesn't have focus will still have a 1 pixel gap, or a gap that you have specified in the settings, even though it's not active. So that's kind of a bit annoying, in my opinion, that you shouldn't have a gap if it's not selected, because that's sort of what I'm used to with window managers like DWL, or when I was on X11 using Xmonad. Okay, floating and the active hint. So the active hint, of course, here, and turn off the active hint. You'll see now this doesn't have. You can see here, when I turn the active hint off, you don't get the border around the window, but you still get the padding. But it kind of merges the windows into one. So you do actually want to have the active hint enabled, because otherwise it's kind of it's difficult to distinguish between the two windows. Okay. Let's just turn that back onto default and set that back to maximized, and set that back there. Okay, so I think you get a similar issue with let's put this to tiled. Okay, so I'm opening the Cosmic terminal there. Close that, close that. See if I open a new instance of Emacs, will it? Yeah, so you can see here Emacs is opening full screen, and the reason for that is because of the settings I have in my early init.el to full screen maximize Emacs, which is kind of, I always want Emacs set up like this. Okay, so what's kind of the advantage of this? I use DWL. I do like DWL. The only reason that I use DWL is because it has independent workspaces per display. I literally never use DWL to tile windows, ever. I just have windows open full screen on different workspaces, and I don't need to tile because if I'm using a terminal like Alacritty here, I'm going to be using tmux to have multiple tabs, as you can see down here. So I don't need to have multiple terminals open and switch between them. I just use tmux. And the same thing with Emacs. I have buffer tabs, so I've got tabs here for Emacs. So I wouldn't have multiple instances of Emacs open I would just have one instance using tabs. So typically my workflow would be alacritty with tmux, Emacs with tabs, a browser, and then on the external monitor, I'd use it to play videos. And that's basically my workflow. So I'm not losing anything by switching from DWL to the Cosmic desktop, because I've got the functionality I need. I've got the independent workspaces to display. If I switch across to so that's one of the differences, one of the killer differences between Gnome and Cosmic is on Gnome, on your external monitor, you only have one workspace, and that workspace won't move when you switch between workspaces on your laptop. But it means that you can only have one application on your external monitor, whereas with Cosmic, you've got multiple workspaces per display, which is an absolutely killer feature. And as I said, the other advantage is when you open the application launcher, as I've shown you here, you can see it's not zooming out the whole thing to an application grid showing you all of your applications. It's using a launcher that's more reminiscent of Krunner or Spotlight or Mac OS X, and you have the ability to search for applications and open them, but it also lists the currently open applications and you can switch to them using a keyboard shortcut. And what you'll notice now is, because I switched to OBS Studio on the second display, is actually listing, interestingly, it's actually listing OBS Studio with Control 1 and Control 4 for alacritty, which is actually on the first workspace on this monitor. So that is another slightly kind of weird thing. The control keys here aren't actually totally related to the what application is on what workspace, as it were, if that makes sense. So you can see here, workspace 1 is actually alacritty, workspace 2. Okay. What is also another nice feature that I should mention is that you might not be aware of is when you open a suppose you're on your laptop screen and you open a video. Okay, in Gnome it will open the video. If you've got it set up, it will open the video on the external display, but it will actually give that video focus. So for example, videos, OBS. So if I was to open this video using a file manager, whether it's Diode or something else, I have it set up so it's going to open on the external monitor. Yeah. With Gnome, what will happen is the application you use to launch the video will lose focus, and MPV will gain focus on the external monitor, which is really, really irritating, because you could open an application here and you think you're interacting with this application on the laptop, but MPV has actually got focus on the external monitor. So you open a video here, and then you've got to click back into your file manager to regain focus. And what happens a lot is you'd open a video or something, start typing, and then you realise you're interacting with MPV and not the application you use to open the video. So that's another thing that is really, really annoying on Gnome. So that's kind of a comparison of the behavior of Gnome and Cosmic. The other thing I want to do is show you bookmarks. So, okay. So with DWL, what happens is when I open these are all links, these are all bookmarks for websites. With DWL, what happens is you can open a link and it will open in Firefox, but it will open in the background. When I open the link with either Gnome or Cosmic, it will open the link and switch to the desktop. So that's another slight distinction in the way that it sort of handles things. So when I open a link, it's automatically going to switch to the application in the workspace and switch to the workspace, as it were. So that's sort of another thing. I'm not too kind of worried about that, but with DWL, it means that you can go through and open multiple links, and they'll all open the browser, and then you switch to the browser on that workspace. Whereas with this, it's automatically going to switch to the application and the workspace. So that's another sort of thing. It's not really an issue. So is it worth switching to Cosmic? Now, if you're using something like Debian or Ubuntu, you can see that those aren't listed there as a supported system, as it were, for Cosmic. Is it worth wiping your whole system and installing one of these distros just to use Cosmic instead of Gnome? Yes, 100%, absolutely. The workflow and the ability to change and customize the setup for your workflow and your environment is a killer feature. Simple things like actually just being able to move the clock from the center and move it to the right. I mean, Gnome won't let you do that. No, Nanny knows best. No, you can't do that. You can only do what I say. And so the issue with Gnome is, if you switch from something like Mac OS X, which is just as restrictive, or Windows, and you switch to Linux for some freedom so that you can actually customize your desktop to how you want to use it. And then, as I said, before Cosmic came along, you really only had a choice of KDE or Gnome as a desktop environment. Of course, you could use a tiling window manager, but the issue with using a tiling window manager is you just lose a lot of desktop functionality. For example, as I said, on DWL, you don't have a volume bar. You have to kind of, build those things yourself. And on DWL, you've got a panel, but then you've got to write scripts just to get the time and the volume in. And you can't have any applets to do things like easily change Wi-Fi networks or audio devices, you've got to write scripts for that. And, you know, you have to use things like NMTUI to manage your networks. So you lose a lot of functionality when you use things like DWL. And I said the only reason I ever use DWL is because it has the ability to have independent workspaces per display, which is something Cosmic offers. So I'm not losing anything by switching from DWL to Cosmic. I still have the same functionality of independent workspaces. I can still use tiling if I want, but I'm just gaining a lot more in the built-in functionality and ease of use of, you know, just being able to come up and click here and, you know, change the volume, or easily come through and turn my keyboard backlight on and off instead of having to use a script. You also have the advantage of, you can see up here, we've got the applet for OBS Studio, and you don't get, unless you use something, I think it's only X11 anyway. Treya was something you could use to have like a tray for application icons. I'm pretty sure on Gnome you don't actually have applets. You've only got the one big applet that you can click, that you use to manage networks and volume and all that kind of stuff. And as I said, Gnome doesn't allow you to change anything. You can use extensions, yeah, but they're not very good. They're third-party things written in JavaScript, and typically they break on every release, and you're relying on, you know, a third-party thing to add functionality that should actually be in the desktop. So you've got the ability to add all these, change the panel, you know, have workspace indicators. So yeah, Cosmic is the Gnome killer. It is 100%. If you're using Gnome and you're fed up of being told what to do and how you can use your desktop, and you've switched to Linux just so that you can actually get some freedom, and then you're constrained by Nanny Knows Best Gnome, the kind of iOS ripoff on your desktop, it's just so much better. And as I said, the really surprising thing for me was that, as I said, Cosmic uses, I think, what was it called? Smith AY, I believe it's called. It's a set of Rust libraries to implement Wayland, but some of the WL roots applications actually work on it. I've only tested two, which is WLR Witchkey and Grim, but if I come across here, I can bring up WLR Witchkey, and I can press S, screenshot, laptop. If I now come into my pictures, you see I've got the screenshot there. So screenshot monitor, screenshot both. So there's the monitor, and there's both displays. I was really surprised that both WLR Witchkey and Grim worked on Cosmic. And one thing to note is WLR Witchkey, the configuration for WLR Witchkey has recently changed the sort of the format. So this is the format for WLR Witchkey. We've got the font, the background, separator, border, corner width, padding, the anchor. So this is where you set the position of the pop-up menu, which in my case is center. And this is how you define the menu. So so you can see here, M. So we've got M, and then we've got the description, which is MPV. The command, which in my case is actually running Emacs client and a function I created called mpv play clipboard, and basically what that allows me to do is come into if I spelled it correctly. Okay, so let's open a video that won't cause any copyright issues. Let's come across to the Magpie channel. Okay, so what I can do basically is just do copy link, press Control-Z, which is the keyboard shortcut for WLR press M, and if I come across to the laptop. Reason why I do this, so it's not getting focus there, so I'll have to look at the focus option, but I have a Hydra, so if I press Control A, I have a Hydra here. I can press M, and this allows me to control MPV using Emacs. So let me come back.
Deary me. Deary me. Here we are.
Laptop. So, right, that's another thing. What I want to do is actually show you bollocks. I didn't. I forgot. I forgot. That cut out the audio because I didn't have the microphone set up on the external monitor. So there's going to be some gaps where I'm just not talking. You're wondering, what are you doing, mate? So my bad. I only just sort of got this all working here, but let me just set the quickly set the mic up on this. Right, okay, there we go. My bad. So yeah, as I said, I've only literally set this up today. But what I wanted to show you is, can I show you this? Screen capture pipewire. So on WL Roots, what you have is you have something called WL Robs, which is a plugin for OBS Studio to enable screen capture on Wayland displays, and that's done with DMA buff, whereas on Wayland compositors that aren't using WL Roots, you can actually use screen capture pipewire. Not sure if you can actually, you can select Windows, you can select displays. I'm not sure if you can select Windows as well, but yeah, OBS Studio is working, and my bad for having the mic turned off on that display. Sorry about that. So yeah, back to the display here. So that's a kind of a lowdown of Cosmic in a lot of detail, nearly going on for 2 hours. But I wanted to give a deep dive of all the options, some of the sort of missing features. And as I said, one thing I should mention, ssh-add. Yeah, so you don't have a keychain at present on these lighters, these clipper lighters these days. Really terrible. You don't have a keychain like you do on Gnome to store your passwords, like your SSH key. There is, as I said, in the Cosmic Terminal, there is an option for passwords here. So I presume that you can add a password for your SSH key with the Cosmic Terminal. But if you're using Alacritty, then you don't have that option. So if you want to add your SSH key, what you got to do basically, I mean, there may be sort of other workarounds, but at present what I'm doing is when I log in, I run eval and in a subshell, there's a subshell, $ parentheses SSH-agent. That starts the SSH agent. You then run ssh-add and you enter your password, and you can then use SSH to pull and push your Git repositories, and it will work globally. It will work in other applications such as Emacs. So that's the workaround for not having a keychain at present. As I said, there is known passwords and keys. Okay, so this is Seahorse. So you may be familiar with that icon for managing your passwords. Interestingly, the password and keys application doesn't let you. I don't think it actually lets you view the passwords. They're all starred out, and you can't change them or anything, but it just kind of caches them in the keychain. So that's something slightly different to the keychain that you might be used to on Mac OS X, where you can sort of change the passwords, but you can actually run into issues with the Gnome keyring, which I have before, where it's not unlocked. You log into your desktop and the keychain is kind of locked. It hasn't unlocked, and you can't use all your passwords and keychain. And then you've got to do stuff like delete the keychain and recreate it. And yeah, so it's a bit of a pain. So not a great application anyway, password and keys, because it has some limited functionality, but it does allow you to enter your sort of passwords. But one of the issues with it is that by default, it uses something called Pine Tree GTK, which doesn't actually allow you to paste in your passwords. So you've got to use Pine Tree curses so that you can paste in your passwords in the terminal. So yeah, it's not a great application and has some issues. So you could perhaps try and use this on Cosmic, but I just wanted to de-gnomify, if that's a word. Just get rid of all the GNOME stuff completely. There's no GNOME applications on my system at all. I've just got sort of the applications I use and the ones that come with Cosmic. And yeah, typically, I mean, the other one is Screenshot. I should have showed you Cosmic Screenshot. Okay. So yeah, here's Cosmic Screenshot. I don't know if it's not actually showing. Okay. It was actually just sort of showing on the, it got stuck on the application launcher. But take my word for it, there is a, can I do a workaround? Can I take a screenshot of the screenshot application? So let me see if I can do that. Okay, Control Z, S, laptop, escape. All right, okay. So pictures, okay. So there we go. So what I did was I launched the screenshot application from the launcher, and then I used WLR which key with the keyboard shortcut I've got set up for Grim to take a screenshot of the Cosmic Screenshot thing here. So I presume the three icons we've got here are for kind of drawing a sort of rectangle to define an area of the screen that we want to take a screenshot from. The second one, I presume, is a window, and the third one would be the whole workspace, as it were, and then a little capture button there and save to pictures. So there isn't a option, for example, to record the screen that you would get in. I think you get that in the Gnome screenshot application. So yeah, that's a screenshot. Okay, let's switch across here, and what I'll do is see if I can show you all the applications. So let me turn the dock back on, and or let me see what the application launcher was. So again, input devices, keyboard, view, customize, application, open application launcher. Let me set that to, is it Super N? Yeah. Okay. So this will show me the applications that are actually getting installed, the Cosmic applications that are actually getting installed on nixos. So that's another nice thing. If you've ever installed, for example, Debian by default, when you just go through and use the wizard and select Gnome desktop, you'll know that it installs everything in the kitchen sink. It installs games and Thai terminals and loads of other stuff, and it's incredibly difficult to de-bloat it and remove all the applications because, for example, the Thai terminal is not actually called the Thai terminal. It's called something completely different, and it's difficult to figure out what the name of the application is to remove it, and you can't actually remove it in the GUI. So what you've got to do is you've got to go through and deselect Gnome desktop and desktop and install Gnome Core, and that installs a slimmed down version of Gnome with just sort of browser and stuff. But basically, we've only got a couple of Gnome. Okay, it does install Xterm. Okay, so Cosmic screenshot, advanced network configuration. But by default, Cosmic, at least on nixos, is installing a minimal amount of stuff. We've got Cosmic files, Cosmic media player, the settings, a terminal, and a text editor. That's it. So let's have a look at I haven't actually played around with the Cosmic player. So let's open the Cosmic player. Okay, so this is the Cosmic player. Pretty bare bones, really. Open media, close file, open media folder. So I presume that allows you to open a folder full of videos and play them sequentially, perhaps. But let's open this up. And again, one thing you'll notice with the picker here, the file picker, is that it defaults to the most recently opened files or folders, and you can change that by coming across from newest first to A to Z. So let's open Debian Bookworm. Let's open okay. Oh, there we go. Hi, in today's video we're going to be right. So that did open after a second. Look at Emacs. We've got full screen and the language server protocol, which is a protocol. Got pause. I presume that's okay. That allows you to select the audio tracks. So if you've got something with multiple audio tracks in different languages, you can select the different language tracks. You can select subtitles. You've got volume. So it's quite a bare bones media player. Sidebar, okay, open folder. Yeah, so that's just a picker. But yeah, it's quite a bare bones media player, but it works. But yeah, no, Cosmic is really snappy. But as I said, switching the workspaces with the 4-finger swipe, okay, you can see there, that's really quick. Whereas if I change with the keyboard shortcut, there is, it's not quite as snappy. But you can see that's swiping with the keyboard. I'm just having to reach over the mouse, reach over my external keyboard to do that. So yeah, it's really quick, responsive desktop compared to Gnome, where it sort of takes ages to sort of switch between things. So yeah. System76 Cosmic. These are the desktops that, the distros rather, that come with the Cosmic desktop. You've got Pop, Fedora, CatchyOS, nixos, Arch, OpenSUSE, however you pronounce that, Slackware, Gentoo. So you don't have, this is beta version 7 and it's not released until the 11th of December, which is what, 9 or 10 days away. So yeah, if you're running Debian or Ubuntu and you're using Gnome, is it worth wiping your system to install Cosmic? Yeah, 100%. Cosmic is far better than Gnome in the ability to configure things, change things, set things up how you want your workflow. And again, the only issue I had was sort of figuring out sort of the Emacs copy and paste, which was down to the Wayland socket location, and that may have just been because I also have DWL installed on this machine, so it incremented the Wayland socket to from Wayland 0 to Wayland 1. But basically, to get this set up on nixos, literally, this is what I had to add. These two sections: enable the login manager, enable the desktop environment, set 4 things up: the greeter, the desktop, the optimization here, the System76 scheduler, and the clipboard. And that was it. So yeah, I only had to make 4 changes in here. I've just commented out all the Gnome stuff, and I'll remove all the commented out Gnome stuff here. But yeah, I just added those, rebuilt my flake, and what I'll also recommend is, what I typically do is, I have Home Manager installed standalone, so typically what I do is, especially if there's an upgrade for NVIDIA or something, it's a good idea to upgrade your system flake and your Home Manager flake before rebooting, because I have had issues, one issue once where I didn't do that, and when I was using Gnome wouldn't start, so I had to switch to DWL. But I can, when I log out, I can't show you the login screen, but it's a nice login screen, and it actually has the ability to switch sessions, so I can still switch to DWL from the GUI login prompt. So if there's any issues with Cosmic, I can still fall back to DWL on this system. So that's a deep dive, as it were. Sorry for the issue when I forgot that I turned off the mic on the external monitor. But in my testing, I've only had it installed since on this machine since last night. So really, I've only been using it on this system for maybe 6 or 7 hours or something. But all of the applications that I use haven't given me any issues. The only one I had to figure out was Emacs, as I said. Browser works fine, Terminal, OBS Studio, and as I said, some WLR which key. That I would really recommend WLR which key. I said the configuration has now changed. This is the new configuration for WLR which key, and this is sort of the old format. And this allows you to press a keyboard shortcut and have a on-screen display of keyboard shortcuts that you can press, and you can also have submenus. And this is really great for you can of course you can define multiple keyboard shortcuts in the Cosmic settings, but this is really nice because it gives you an actual heads-up display of the keyboard shortcuts and the description of what they are. I can press S and I've got a submenu there to use Grim to take screenshots. So I was really surprised that WLR which key and Grim, which are both WL roots-based compositors, actually worked on Cosmic, which, as I said, I believe uses Smith-A, whereas Gnome uses Mutter. That's it, Mutter. And neither of these applications would work on Gnome, which kind of broke my workflow a bit. Toffee doesn't seem to work, but the application launcher is absolutely fine to use. That's one thing I almost forgot. Sorry. How you set your XKB settings. Right. So, important thing. Right. Interestingly, you also get a Cosmic initial setup done, which you can see here. With Gnome, you get a Gnome initial setup done, but Cosmic stores all its configuration files in .config Cosmic. If we come into this directory, what you'll see here is we have com.system76 and then a list of different directories that correspond to different settings that you can enable. So you've got the app library background, you've got the compositor. So yeah, this is the one. com.system76.cosmic.comp. And what you'll see here is in each of these directories they have something called v1, and these look these are actually files. So you can see here xkb comp, and what you see here, this is how you set your XKB settings. This is absolutely crucial because, as far as I'm aware, there isn't an option in the GUI settings to set the XKB options. You can do that on Gnome. You can use Gnome tweaks. So let me just come into config XKB. So in a previous video, which you can check out on the channel, I showed you how you can use XKB on Wayland to set custom options to remap the keyboard. And what you've got to do is, some of these directories are empty, but you've got to create the empty directory. So you can see here compact and key codes and types are all empty. But we have rules and symbols. So in rules, we have evdev and evdev.xml. So what we got here is option symbols. And this is the setup I created. I created a one called swap sterling number sign. And that was because the sterling, as you may be aware, is the pound symbol, the pound, not the hash, the pound, hang on, that, no, which one is, I've changed it to something else, I can't remember where it is, but on my keyboard, Shift 3 would output the pound icon, and what I wanted was the hash, because that is used a lot for things like comments and shell scripts, and it really bugged me that I'd have to press another key. I can't remember what flipping key it was. Sort of, I can't remember where I changed it to. Yeah, but basically I wanted to change Shift 3 from outputting the pound to the hash symbol. So I've got a keyboard shortcut that swaps to sterling, and this is the evdev. And then what we have is the symbols, and we have custom and GB. What we've got here is swap sterling number sign. And the same in here. So key A033 number sign sterling, and that basically swaps the key from the pound to the hash. Okay, and so this is how you change the keyboard layout. So you create the XKB directory and set up your key map as I showed you in that video. And this is the crucial part here. You can see we've got layout, GB, and Mac, which actually is set in the GUI. But this options thing here, what you've got to do is have some parentheses and in double quotes what we got here, the keyboard shortcut. So this is a predefined one, control swap left alt and left control, and what that does on my keyboard is, which is a Dell XPS 15, the layout is control function super and alt. And it's a real stretch to use control for copy and paste with control at the far left. So I swap control and alt. So that's what this does. Control, swap, left, alt, left, control. And then what we have, you can see here, custom. So this is the custom XKB key map that I've defined. Swap sterling number sign, which is the name of the key map that I created. And what that does is that swaps the sterling key for the hash symbol, and then we have caps none and terminate control alt backspace. So this is how you change the XKB options on the Cosmic desktop, and it took a while to actually figure out, and I did actually ask Gemini for how you set the options, because I thought it would just be, as you can see here from these other ones, you would just presume that you would put this in double quotes, but you actually have to have some parentheses and the key maps in the double quotes, and this is a Rust convention apparently. And you know, if I hadn't asked Gemini, that would have really stumped me, and that would have been an absolute showstopper, not being able to remap my keys. So again, config cosmic comp v1 xkb comp, and you can go through a lot of these, and you'll see a lot of these will actually be empty, but some of them will actually have lots of settings, so you can go through these directories and actually change the settings manually that you would in the GUI. And this is also useful because at the moment Home Manager on nixos doesn't have Cosmic desktop options that you can declare in Home Manager to set things. So what you'd have to do is what I use is Emacs, and I tangle my configuration file. So I will add this xkb config option to my dot files, so that it actually sets these, so that what I can do in Emacs is tangle or write out that config to this location. So I haven't gone through all of these settings, but you can see here wallpaper, for example, v1 custom images. Okay, and so what you'll see here is this corresponds to settings, desktop. I'll just close this and come back in. Wallpaper. You've got two wallpapers here. If I click X here, that's going to remove that one. I'll come back in here. You'll see now it just has the one option, which is the full path to the wallpaper. So what's nice is you can actually just edit these text files and, you know, add the settings manually rather than using the GUI, which makes it kind of easier to deploy your settings on multiple systems. So that's one thing I almost forgot. The .config cosmic directory is where it stores all these settings, and they're broken down into separate directories according to the settings. You've got there's also custom key, there's also the custom keyboard shortcuts. So the custom keyboard shortcuts that are created for doing things like opening alacritty, Emacs, that sort of thing. I think they're in here. Yeah, okay, they are. So you have one com.system76 cosmic settings shortcut. Those are the keyboard shortcuts. And in the GUI, they're in input devices, keyboard, view and customize, and then custom here. So these are the custom keyboard settings that I created, and that corresponds to the shortcuts directory in config cosmic. And you'll see this is the structure of that config file. So these are the custom keyboard shortcuts. So that's another thing I would want to add to my dot files and write out to that directory, so that you know, it also helps because it means you've got a backup of the sort of settings. So hopefully that will sort of take you through getting Cosmic set up. As I said, these are all the distros it's supported. You don't have to use nixos, but as I said, it's really nice because it was literally just a couple of settings. This one, optimization and clipboard. That's it. So that's how easy it is to set things up on nixos. And the advantage is you can actually have multiple desktops set up on nixos, which don't interfere with each other. So as I said, I've got DWL. These clipper lighters, I swear. DWL set up as a backup, which uses WL roots, and that doesn't interfere with my Cosmic desktop. On that note, one thing I should actually mention while I think of it is what I do is I actually have a couple of systemd scripts that set the wallpaper and a some option the volume and time in the DWL panel. So wallpaper. So what I've got here, I need to change that to Cosmic. What this script does is, first of all, I export the path so that it includes the nix bin directory. But what I do here is I actually have a check. If xdg current desktop equals Cosmic, it's going to exit. Yeah. So the script only runs if it's running on WL roots, and what I have here is WBG, and what this does is the WBG is a WL roots application to set the wallpaper. So this script only runs if it's running on WL roots. If it's running on Cosmic, it doesn't do anything. And status bar. Okay, what this does is this is actually a script that sets the time and the it creates a little applet for the volume, showing the current volume. And what it actually has to do is it actually has to run every second, because obviously it's a clock, so it's got to run every second to update the time. And it means that it's constantly updating, checking the volume level and updating it. But as you can see here, it checks if the desktop is Cosmic, and if it is, then it exits. But if it's running on WL roots, it will actually create a little section in the DWL status bar that adds the time and a volume applet, sort of, using these things here for either mute or that, and a percentage showing the volume level. So that's kind of one of the issues with DWL, is you kind of got to do these kind of workarounds just to get a simple thing like a clock and a volume indicator. So that's just something else I thought I'd mention. So hopefully I've covered everything. As I said, I've only been playing around with this on this machine since last night. What I originally did was I've got the old MacBook Air 2011, and I set Cosmic up on that first of all, just to make sure there were no issues before I switched my main machine across, which is a kind of a good idea. So yeah, you could try this out in a VM or something like that. Just so you've kind of got the hang of it before you switch your main machine across. But yeah, I would completely recommend it. I'm going to switch all my machines to Cosmic. I've got a MacBook Pro Retina 2015, which is currently running Debian and Gnome, and eventually I'll wipe that to get Gnome off it, and I'll switch it to nixos from Debian. Purely because issues with Gnome, with things like just simple things like that is wonderful on Gnome. When you press the keyboard shortcut for the launcher, it zooms out the whole thing, shows you an application grid, and it also zooms out your external monitor, which is really jarring. You've got other issues on Gnome, like I said, application focus, which I mentioned. So like whenever you open a video, it will, in MPV or something, it will give MPV focus and take focus away from, the application you're using, which is incredibly irritating, because you start typing and then, it does something with MPV. So the way Cosmic handles, you know, simple things like that is just far better than Gnome. So yeah, wipe if you're using Debian or Ubuntu or something like that. Wipe it. If you're running Gnome, give Cosmic a go. And as I said, I've tried KDE in the past, but the interface with KDE is not consistent. And KDE is much more of a framework. It's lots of bits all working together, you know, I don't like it. I mean, some people do, fair enough, but it's much more of a framework of things all working together to try and create a desktop, and it creates a shit ton of configuration files that just litter your configuration directory, just millions of different sort of items. Whereas this is really nice and clean. Only comes with a few default applications, and I think I've been chundering away for nearly 2.5 hours. So congratulations if you've followed along in all this. But I'll put links to all my configuration files and the Cosmic page on nixos. But yeah, it's a piece of piss to get this set up on Cosmic or on nixos rather. Basically, hang on. I changed my, added the configuration options for Cosmic, for the login manager, enable Cosmic, the clipboard, and where was the other one? There's another, let me see if I can find it. Clipboard. The other one was where was it? There's the scheduler. Yeah, okay. Yeah. System76 scheduler enabled equals true is the other option you want to have to improve performance. But basically, once I've added all those options, Nixflake update, so as nixos rebuild switch -- flake, name of your flake. I then updated my home manager flake as well, rebooted, bang, got Cosmic. And as I said, the only issue that I had was with Emacs and having to create this section for the Wayland socket. So let me just show you that this works. Cosmic. So you can see there, can paste into Emacs. Select that. Copy that, pastes into there. So I mean that's kind of a deal breaker for me, being able to copy in and out of Emacs and various applications. So that was the only thing that stumped me for a while. The other issue, as I said, that may confuse you, Cosmic settings, when you first boot up, remember for some reason, it sets the external monitor as 1 and the internal laptop monitor as 2. And that really completely baffled me, because what happens is it comes up with a greeter. You click through and say, okay, I want a dock at the bottom and the panel at the top. And I couldn't interact with the screen, and what I had to do was I had to move my cursor right on the external monitor, and then it showed up on this monitor. Click through the setup and then rearrange the display. So that's one thing that may kind of throw you a bit. But yeah, that's all for now. I'll leave it there and give Cosmic a try. It's you can wait till the 11th till it's out of beta. You just want to be absolutely sure. And again, the other thing that may throw you, or just refresh your memory with the desktop dock. Turn the dock on. Okay. When you want to remove something, you right click and you untick this pin to app tray, and that will remove the icon from the app tray. And as I said, one kind of weird bug is when you move this, you can see you got 2. So that's kind of a bit confusing. And then when you move it back, it goes to 1. So that's another kind of little glitch. And the other thing that you're going to want to workspaces. The other thing you're going to want to do probably is change the workspaces from vertical to horizontal. So they show up there. Otherwise, they kind of come up this way. And when you switch workspaces, they go up and down, which is kind of a bit odd. So hope I've covered all the sort of glitches or things that are missing. Like the main thing that's kind of missing at the moment is the keychain. But nothing that can't be worked around and prevent you from actually switching to Cosmic. And yeah, it's a gnome killer. That's the short answer. It is the gnome killer. Once this actually gets into sort of main distributions like Ubuntu and Debian, which may take a while to be fair, I think Gnome's in trouble. It really is. So that's all for now. I'll leave it there.